I just saw Wonder Woman 1984, and I'm conflicted. When I first watched it at home, the safer option, I thought it was a fun time, but in the words of Maxwell Lord,
Life is good, but it can be better.
throughout the movie, I tried my best to check my brain at the door and just go along with what was happening. But then after it was over, I actually thought about what happened in the movie, and it both confused and infuriated me. There's just a lot of stuff in this movie that doesn't make any sense when viewed critically, and unfortunately, I'm a critical thinker. Since I need a new series to make on this channel to keep things from growing stale, why not talk about the shows and movies I don't completely hate for the most part, but I feel can be improved in certain places so I can enjoy it a little bit more. I was going to make a video on Death Note to start this series off, but it will have to wait for another day. I already see the people disliking this video over that, but let me just be clear, these will be my opinions. If you enjoy everything about these movies and shows, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you to stop enjoying something or try to change your opinion. I'm just going to explain why I don't like this or that and why I would change it. So here's the thing. I didn't want this movie to turn out how it did. The first Wonder Woman movie was a turning point in the DCEU. After Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, people believed this universe was a mess, filled with movies that didn't understand their characters and were trying to compete with Marvel by being dark and edgy just for the sake of it. Superman shouldn't be this sad, tragic figure when he is a symbol of hope, and Batman shouldn't be killing people. I don't have to explain why that's wrong. These movies were trying to set up way too much at once, sacrificing story and plot for tacked on foreshadowing and introductions. Like Iron Man, they were trying to run before they could walk, but Iron Man actually succeeded at that. So then Wonder Woman came along, and it showed people that these movies can be just as good as the MCU. It also showed Warner Brothers that some of the movies don't have to be dark and spend most of the runtime setting up sequels and other movies. If you make the movie entertaining and focus on the story at hand, people will enjoy it more. Go figure. The movie was pretty good, with stellar acting from Gal Gadot as my definitive Wonder Woman and Chris Pine as Steve Trevor. Great direction from Patty Jenkins, an engaging plot, interesting character development and world building, fun chemistry between Diana and Steve, and thrilling action scenes. Yeah, the last half hour doesn't hold up that well, but, people tend to let that go because of how great the rest of the movie is. DC didn't seem to learn their lesson, though, with Justice League. They're trying to undo that wrong right now. But then they went on a hot streak with Aquaman and Shazam, building a solid universe off a rocky foundation. Not really sure if this statement is true with Birds of Prey, as I haven't gotten around to seeing it. So let me know if this is still true. So when I heard about this sequel and how everyone would be back for it, somehow, I was very excited, and if it was half the quality of the first film, it would still be great. I take back the second half of that statement. When I was watching, I was in disbelief that the same team who worked on the first film made this. The biggest problem with this movie is there are a lot of dumb shit that happens in it that just cannot be ignored. It's okay to have one or two plot holes in a film as long as it doesn't break the level of entertainment. But there are so many plot holes, conveniences, unanswered questions, here to the point where this whole script is structured around it. When I also heard Patty Jenkins was also directing a Rogue Squadron movie for Star Wars, I was excited because I knew the project was in very competent hands. Now, I'm a bit skeptical. I still hope it turns out great, though. Now, this movie's not terrible. It's not phenomenal either. I just think both people calling it the worst movie in the DCEU and those calling it one of its best are both over-exaggerating just a little bit. If you still want to watch something that is fun without having to think too much, this movie is a fine choice to make. Now, I don't like starting these things on a negative note, but the introduction to this movie is a little unnecessary. So the movie starts with a flashback on Themyscira, where a 10-year-old Diana Prince participates in an Amazonian competition to determine the strongest warrior on the island against a bunch of adult challengers. I'm not kidding. So, before I start talking about what I don't like here, I'm going to start with the things I actually enjoy. This is something that can be said for most of the movie, but the cinematography and camera work is great here. There are some really interesting angles and shots used in this competition that really spice up the scene without disorienting and confusing the audience. Even with the crazy spins and the cutbacks to the people watching, the editor is still competent in creating a coherent sequence of events without losing focus. Also, the acting here done by the child actress playing Diana is actually surprisingly good. It's both emotional and convincing. Both these elements made the scene tolerable in retrospect. Alright, now the parts I don't like about it. The whole concept of the scene retcons a lot of Diana's established backstory. In the first movie, Diana's mother would not let her train with the other warriors when she was younger because she didn't want Diana to become a warrior and she feared for her safety because she's a child. Now, in this scene, Diana's mother lets her participate in Amazonian Ninja Warrior involving rams, narrow footing, and 100 feet plus dives alongside fully trained adult soldiers? What? How is she possibly okay with this? Also, at some point, she had to have possibly known that Diana was training in secret. Like, when she's perfectly hitting bullseyes with her bow and arrow on horseback, her mom must have been like, wait, where the hell did she learn that one? Now, the other thing here you'll notice about the scene that's persistent throughout the movie is there's absolutely no logic on anything that happens on scene. Alright? Now, how is a child keeping up in a physical competition with fully trained warriors, like the elite of the elite? I love how these warriors were going to ram a child into the ocean to win this competition. Screw them kids, am I right? So this scene ends with Diana getting blocked by the general because she took a shortcut in the competition after falling off her horse. The general does is to show her that cheating your way to success and the things you want in life is wrong and you need to work for it. And she spells out the entirety of this movie's message. So this little part here is kind of ridiculous because it contradicts the big decision Diana makes later. It makes it seem like she learned nothing. Oh yeah, trust me, I'm getting there. Give me time. In my opinion, this whole intro needed to be cut. This sequence lasts 11 minutes of the runtime. The pacing in this movie in general just brings it down, as the movie is 2.5 hours long and some of it is filler material. I feel like Warner Brothers told Patty Jenkins to keep this scene in to make the movie more interesting, even though it serves no purpose whatsoever, because they were worried that the audience would get bored throughout, as there's like only 4 action sequences in the entire film, and most of them are under 10 minutes. All I'm saying is that some of the fat here needed to be trimmed to make the movie less meandering. There is no reason a movie like this should have been more than 2 hours. The next scene, however, should have been the real introduction to this movie. Everything about this scene is great. The title crawl, along with the establishing shots and music, work well at reeling us into the 80s vibe and setting of the movie. You know, the 84 in Wonder Woman 1984. The scene starts with a woman crossing the street as she's about to get hit by a car, only to be saved by another woman, a Wonder Woman.
Please clap.
These are the types of scenes I like to see in my superhero movies. I like it when they try to show the hero saving people, and it's not just always stopping robberies or small schemes. Wonder Woman is a character who values human life. She should be trying to save as many people as she can with as little harm as possible, like with the bride falling over the bridge. This whole scene shows why Wonder Woman is such an uplifting and inspiring character. Gal Gadot is the definitive Diana Prince because of how she portrays her morality for saving as many lives as possible with as little damage done. So, moving on. There is now a mall scene where 4 guys are trying to rob a jewelry store, and there was the one guy who screwed up the whole operation simply because he dropped his gun. I just love how goofy this movie can be at times. The humor in this movie is like kind of good in some places where I actually genuinely laughed. And these gags are when it's fine to be dumb. Anyways, the guy who dropped the gun also almost chops a child 3 stories up. I'm sorry, I just love how her dad's just so calm in this situation. So before she hits the ground, Wonder Woman once again busts in to save her. The way she thwarts these guys by crushing their guns with her hands, throwing them through drums while winking at the camera, it's just so much fun to watch. In my opinion, this is like the Christopher Reeve level of campiness that some of these movies are missing, in my opinion. I was loving this scene up until she was throwing her tiaras at the cameras so that there's no physical proof of her being there. There's just one problem with this idea. There are still hundreds of witnesses who saw her do these things. The cameras are the least of her worries, and I'm pretty sure destroying the cameras don't destroy the footage. And this is where I started to notice that the script is kind of messy. Yeah, if I had to pick the weakest part of this whole movie, it would have to be the writing. The writing is the best way to represent this movie because the script is really good in some places, like with Diana's characterization, and really weak in other places. For example, all the retconning. Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns just try to twist things around to make parts of this movie work when it just creates a lot more confusion. So in this universe, after Diana fought in World War I, witnessing how evil and destructive mankind can be, and left in a state of grief after Steve Trevor dies, she goes into hiding for almost 100 years, until she is brought back to fight Doomsday in Batman vs. Superman. Then this movie comes along and just tells us straight up, actually, this is not the case. She is in hiding, but still helping people. And this answer raises more questions than necessary, like why did Diana sit out of several major wars, especially World War II, a far more devastating war than the first, and she just let Hitler kill 6 million innocent lives. This isn't something that Diana would do. She values innocent life above all. I get doing this would have gotten Captain America comparisons, but you didn't even try to explain. You had time. So after this mall scene, we're shown Diana moping around Washington, D.C., mourning Steve. And, well, there's not really a lot to talk about here since not much happens again, drags on a little too long. So let's just get to the true introductions of our antagonists, Cheetah and Maxwell Lord. Here's the thing I like about this movie more than the first, the villains. I think both are great interpretation of these characters. And I know what you're about to say, but they're not completely faithful to the comics. Ah. Well, here's the thing about comic book movies. I don't mind when things are changed from the source material if it fits the movie better.
Through. Well, why you booing me? I'm right.
Some things in the comics just don't work well in these movies. I love Pedro Pascal. He does a good job as the greedy Maxwell Lord, but he is at times eclipsed by Kirsten Wiig as the envious Cheetah in the acting department. I don't know why I feel this way. Might have to do with her dialogue being written a bit better. Because at the beginning of this movie, Kirsten Wiig portrays Barbara Minerva as an awkward and kind person. But as she gets her powers and slowly loses her humanity, her delivery and presence just gradually becomes more confident and aggressive. Multiple villains in a comic book movie doesn't usually work because it's often too much happening at once and they have to fight for the spotlight, with one getting more characterization than the other. This was a problem in the first one because Ares gets a lot of attention, but I cannot tell you one trait that Dr. Poison has other than her scarred face. Here, nothing revolutionary is done, but both antagonists are treated the same for the most part. They get their own individual arcs with their characterization being balanced out at the same time, and both their stories revolve around greed and envy. Mirroring their stories and giving them time to grow makes their team up at the end much more fun. Barbara hasn't really started her transformation into Cheetah yet, so we spend the beginning of the movie digging into Maxwell Lord's character, as he is an ambitious yet desperate con man who longs for greater success along with his son's respect and admiration. When Barbara gets her powers, her motivations become more fleshed out, and her character development gets the time it needs to progress, while Maxwell gets sidelined a bit. When Barbara meets Diana and they become friends, there are great scenes here where their friendship is built on kindness, but underneath you can sense the envy that Barbara has for Diana, as Diana is confident and gets everyone's attention in the room just by walking in, and Barbara is the opposite. And this makes the conflict more emotional and personal for Diana. So after Diana meets her, Barbara shows her the Dreamstone, the magic MacGuffin of the film that grants wishes to those who touch it, but takes away something in return. And this is a plot point that gets minimal explanation and in turn creates a lot of confusion. So Barbara uses the stone to become exactly like Diana, and her wish turns out the same way as she loses her kindness and humanity in the process, because that's how it works with the Dreamstone. You wish for something, it takes something away in the turn. Maxwell also uses a stone to become a wish granter, has its powers. Why there isn't a clause against that type of wish, I don't know. Not explained. And his wish turns out the same way as he uses it to become rich and famous. But the wish granting takes a toll on his body. Diana used the stone to resurrect Steve Trevor. And even though she loses her power and invincibility, her wish comes true as Steve comes back, but his consciousness is transferred to another man's body. Wait, hold on a second. How did everyone's wish come true as exactly as they wanted, But Diana's came with a catch. This stone can create objects like nukes out of thin air, but it can't recreate a dead body. This is where an explanation on the rules could have helped out. So Steve Trevor is back for this movie, and Chris Pine is, he's alright in this movie. I think that's really due to the fact that the script doesn't give him much to do in this story other than punch some guys and give Diana moral support. If you take him out of this movie, it plays out in almost the exact same way. And that sucks, because in the first movie, he's an instrumental character whose knowledge and involvement in the story sets the entire plot in motion. When I heard Chris Pine was coming back for this movie, I thought they would butcher the explanation behind his resurrection. And it's worse than I thought it would be. In this movie, Steve Trevor's in someone else's body, but we still see Chris Pine's face. When I tell you that's the least of this movie's problems with this explanation, I'm being serious. Like, it gets really messed up once you ask yourself some dark yet very important questions this movie ignores, like, if Steve's conscience is swapped with this guy's, where does the original one go? Is this guy's conscience trapped inside Steve's dead body? Does he know what is happening? Doesn't he have a life of his own with friends and family and a job that is now ruined because of a wish? If Diana has sex with his body with another man's conscience in it, and the original guy can't consent to it because his conscience is not there, isn't that technically rape? Now, I wouldn't have any of these questions or problems if you just brought Steve back normally. Moving on. Now that Maxwell had become the stone, he uses it to grant other wishes, but he cannot make any wishes of his own. So he uses his power to make his enemy/investor, Simon Stagg, wish that the land he invested in was rich in oil and become massively rich. However, Maxwell then makes the wish that Simon gets put in prison so he has no competition. But he already used his one wish on his powers. How is he getting another one? Now, this happens twice in this movie. When Maxwell travels to Egypt to meet with a prince to get more oil, he grants this prince a wish that he has the wall built around his land so he can protect his resources. And then when the prince reveals his oil was already sold off, Maxwell wishes to take his whole security team so he's unprotected from the eventual mutiny from his people. He can't do this. He already used his one wish. I get that the stone has trade-off for wishes, but it shouldn't be him that decides that because it complicates things for later. I'm starting to think someone didn't proofread their script. So when Diana and Steve see that Maxwell's in Cairo with the Dreamstone, as far as they know, they decide to break into the Smithsonian to get a fighter jet to get to Cairo. Now you may be asking yourself, why don't they just take a commercial flight to get to Cairo? Well, that's because Steve doesn't have a passport, dumbass. He's not technically alive. But you know who does have one? The guy who Steve's conscience is in. Did you already forget about that? I didn't. We could have had a scene where Steve experiences modern day travel for the first time. That would have been way better than the 80s nostalgia montage. It would have been way funnier. And also, why would they break into the Smithsonian to get a fully fueled plane? If we're lucky. Because the chances of it being filled is extremely unlikely. It's in a museum on display. We're using it to travel across the ocean without refueling once. How do you think Amelia Earhart died? Diana, I know you were around for that one. You're telling me there wasn't like a military airfield they couldn't have found in Washington, D.C.? Alright, fine. So they get in, and Steve is able to fly it like a pro because he flew biplanes in the 1920s. Yeah, a biplane and a fighter jet can be flown the same way. Sorry for the sarcasm. This movie's really wearing me down. As they are taking off, they get caught on the radar system that Diana forgot about. Not going to complain about that. Movie acknowledges that this is dumb. But you know what isn't acknowledged as dumb? The escape plan and the explanation behind it.
My father hid the mascara from the world, and I've been trying to learn how we did it.
Did what?
Made something invisible. But in 50 years, I've only done it once.
Wait, hold on a second. Since when was Wonder Woman learning how to turn things invisible? I was paying attention the whole time, and there is not one scene where she is learning this power. This reveal comes out of nowhere. Oh, but I thought you didn't mind when the movie changes things. Yeah, when it fits the movie and is properly explained. Having one line of dialogue about how her dad made the mascara invisible so that she can as well is not a proper explanation. There was no build up to this. Like, why wasn't there a scene where she practices this move by doing something like, I don't know, make a pencil disappear? No, not like that. Why wasn't this explained better? You had time! Also, this power creates a whole new plot hole in the script. Because remember how I said how Diana was breaking cameras to hide her appearance? Well, she wanted to hide her appearance so badly. Why didn't she just turn herself invisible and turn it off after? This seems like a big oversight, as later she is walking around in public in full costume in front of thousands of people, and this power is never used and mentioned again in the future. So whatever. Why the hell should I care? Anyways, we're in Cairo now, and Diana and Steve find Maxwell and his security team just by wandering around. That's very convenient. So, they chase after him to find the truth about what happened to the stone. It is during this sequence that the cracks start to show for the effects. Yeah, the CGI is terrible here, as things like Wonder Woman running fast towards the trucks look so artificial, as it seems like there's no compositing done on the effect. I get it was a reference to the 70s show, but come on now. Her head stays still the entire time when she is running. Like, it looks like she's both moving and in place at the same time. But other than that, I actually kind of enjoyed this chase scene in general. It was fun seeing things like Diana whip around these trucks. It gave me like Raiders of the Lost Ark vibes. It was so much fun. Also, seeing her getting injured after taking a gunshot to show her powers draining, as that is something she could have just shrugged off earlier. It's an honest effort to make Diana seem more vulnerable and higher the stakes in the stories, even though she can't really die yet because, this is a prequel. But another good moment here is when during the chase, she stops going after Maxwell to save two kids who are playing on the road. It reinforces the idea that she values human life and will do her best to save everyone with as little damage as possible. I love how after she saves these kids and lets Maxwell get away, she interacts with the people in the area to make sure everything is okay. And this is also another thing that's great about Wonder Woman, her empathy towards others. Diana is basically how Superman should have been in his first two movies. Her empathy towards others is important for later, as it is a driving force in her conflict with Cheetah and Maxwell Lord. Speaking of which, Barbara is now slowly losing herself at this point in the story. As she gets stronger, her kindness and empathy towards others quickly starts to fade away. At the beginning of the movie, there's a man on the street who harasses Barbara and tries to assault her. When she runs into the man again later in the story, she beats him to the point of critical condition and takes pleasure in it. As much as this guy deserves this is not something Barbara would have done at the beginning, and that's the point. Maxwell Lord also loses himself as well, as you see the effect the wish granting has on his body and mental state as he becomes more and more power hungry. He even starts to neglect his own son, the person he was doing all this for, and forgets about his existence entirely for a good chunk of the runtime. I've seen people online make fun of this point. I don't think this is really a plot hole here. It was supposed to show in his quest for power, Maxwell loses touch with reality and forgets what really matters in life. I think it was actually a good part of the story. So, Diana and Steve return to Washington to meet with Barbara and a guy whose name I've already forgotten, it doesn't matter, and who knows the history of the Dreamstone. The origins of this MacGuffin are needlessly overcomplicated. So the movie tells us, that's right, they tell us, they don't show us, that the stone was used by many forgotten civilizations and it led to their eventual decay. But it was never specified where it actually originated because the characters didn't know. Out of all the times you could have chosen not to lazily explain stuff through a line or two of dialogue, you choose now not to do this. Sorry for not digging into the problems as much as stuff at the beginning. I need to save what's left of my energy for the bigger issues. The characters also learn that the stone was created by the god of mischief, Dechalafria. Let's just call him DC Loki to save time. So DC Loki uses the stone to take away something in place of your wish, like Diana's weakening powers, or that dude's body. So Steve then realizes that in order for her to save the world, he has to sacrifice himself again by having Diana renounce her wish, but she isn't willing to let him go. This is great for testing that ideology I was talking about. The whole movie where she's saving others without any extra damage. As her whole motive here is kind of selfish in certain situations. Like, she wants everything, and the world will suffer because she will give up nothing. And Barbara is the same way too, as she refuses to give up her powers, so she vanishes. So Maxwell Lord is off to the White House to meet with the president. Hey, you're not Ronald Reagan. All right. So to help him out with the Cold War. and dealing with the Russians. He is worried about the situation escalating and the war ending in nuclear annihilation. So Maxwell helps him out by granting him a wish. The president uses this wish to get more nukes to intimidate the enemy. For real, this is the most short-sighted decision I have ever seen a president do. Okay, we're talking fictional presidents. Calm down. He could have used this wish to end the war, create peace between the nations, or just have the Russians back off entirely. But no, he uses it to escalate the situation, which he was trying to avoid in the first place. I know this decision is only made to make sure the climax of the movie happens, because the Russians decide, after learning this new information, to nuke the US, because of course that would happen. Anyways, so Maxwell then right after learns about the government program that would allow them to hack into any foreign television signal to deal with international crises. So he then decides to take the president's power and influence and go to the program site to broadcast himself to the world to get everything he'd ever wanted. There's just one slight problem with that plan: language barriers. This plan hinges on the idea that everyone understands fluent English. The whole climax of the movie is very contrived and feels way too forced. Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns tried to have this big finale without doing any of the work to set it up properly. As the movie goes on, the writing gets lazier and lazier to the point of pure incompetence. Imagine sitting in the writer's room with Jeff and Patty being like, hey, we already put all this dumb shit in our movie. Why don't we just get to the final act without any setup or logic built behind it? I don't know. Won't this make the audience frustrated with our movie and ruin the entertainment value? Nah, we've already made them brain dead at this point. We'll be fine. So Wonder Woman finds Maxwell again and learns his plan. Then Cheetah comes in wearing just leopard print clothing, and despite being inaccurate as hell, it's actually a decent costume. Anyways, Wonder Woman and Cheetah start to fight, and she is easily outmatched by the ferocity that Cheetah uses to fuel her strength, hence the importance of giving up the wish. Diana is on the ground, and instead of telling her the "you'll never win" cliche speech, she actually tries to empathize with her and tries to convince her that there's still good in her and that she needs to give up her wish. Being a little hypocritical there, don't you think, Diana? So this speech, of course, falls on deaf ears, and Cheetah joins Maxwell Laura to become his bodyguard, sort of. Maxwell offers her a wish, and she says this:
I don't want to be like anyone anymore. I want to be number one. An apex predator.
Alright, that was a little too vague, don't you think? For all we know, this could just mean she turns into an alligator, a lion, or a whale. No? Alright, cool then. So Diana and Steve are walking around Washington as the town goes into apocalypse mode over the Russians. As she realizes that her powers in their current state won't cut it, Diana still doesn't want to lose Steve again. So he tells her this whole speech about how she needs to move on, the world needs her more than she needs him, there's no other choice than to give this guy's conscience back, as he is supposed to be dead, and she can't cheat to get the things she wants in life, which was already spelled out to her by someone else. This moment was done way better in the first movie, with the whole "I can save the day, but you can save the world" speech. It's powerful here because it shows that Steve is just a human, and while he can stop a whole city from being gassed, Wonder Woman has the power to end the entire war because she is more than a human. His heroism inspires her to keep going and defeat Ares, and it was a fitting end to his character arc. Here, it's basically, let me die so you can have a fighting chance, and after refusing for so long, Diana finally renounces her wish, and Steve dies again. This is supposed to be a heartbreaking moment, but all I can think is, oh, thank God that guy gets to have his body back. His life is ruined now, but at least his conscience is no longer trapped somewhere. It's still a win. So now Diana has to get to her apartment to get this gold armor that she explained to Steve earlier, how it was used by an Amazonian named Asteria, how it kept off mankind so that the Amazonians could make their way into Themyscira away from society. Oh, wow. There's actually a scene showing off how powerful and mighty the armor is. It's not just a line or two of exposition. The writing may not be that bad. Okay, so Diana does her stupid run animation again and uses her lasso to leap into the sky. I wonder if she's gonna go back for the jet. What's going on? What? So,
It's easy.
So she can fly now! But she could do it in the comics. It was a power given to her by Hermes in the new 52 storylines, and she had to learn how to do it. Here, she's able to fly because she's told by Steve to flow with the wind. Why couldn't you have a couple moments here or there with her trying to learn how to fly to give this scene more build-up and a satisfying feel? You had time! It's amazing what's chosen to be in this movie and what wasn't. Diana wears the armor and flies over to the broadcast station to stop Maxwell's plan that is already happening. He gets on TV and he's granting the wishes of the entire world. One more problem that I forgot to mention earlier, but it's more relevant now. This plan also banks on the idea that everyone will use their wish on something selfish, like fame or fortune. At no time are we shown anyone wishing, like, their grandmother no longer had cancer, or that they had world peace, or for nuclear disarmament. Oh, now I see why. So Diana shows up to the base and is stopped by Cheetah and ugh, ugh, ugh. What the hell am I looking at here? Oh, the effects and designs went completely downhill from here. This final transformation looks like a rejected costume from Cats. All you had to do was at least make it orange, but she's gray for some reason and blends in with the darkness to hide how bad the effect looks. Well, at least we get an entertaining final battle, right? Nope. This is the most forgettable and boring final fight I've ever seen in a superhero movie. The fight starts with Diana using the suit to protect herself, and Cheetah rips and tears at it like it's plastic. The armor that was supposed to be indestructible? After that, besides like a flip trick and Cheetah swinging from a telephone wire, nothing else really happens in this fight. You can't even really see what is happening because most of it is in the dark because of the effects. And the only thing that's interesting about this fight is the emotional conflict underneath, as Diana doesn't really want to fight Barbara because she believes under all that awful cat fur, she's still a good person. But unfortunately, this kind of conflict doesn't really make for entertaining fights unless it's properly balanced and done right. She even tries to save her from the undone power line, and it's only when she has no other choice that Wonder Woman drowns and electrocutes Cheetah. Yeah, you heard that right. So in this situation, wouldn't Diana get electrocuted too? Because hear me out for a second. She's wearing metal armor, and metal is known to conduct electricity. Also, since Cheetah has Wonder Woman's powers, plus more, wouldn't she actually be okay if it does nothing to Wonder Woman? Whatever, let's just get to this final conflict. So Wonder Woman swoops in to stop Maxwell Lord for a finale that is both emotional and goofy at the same time. For example, the scene starts with Diana knocking over and breaking the camera, but Maxwell is still able to project himself worldwide. Okay. Then, I kid you not, she cannot get to him. Not because of bodyguards or defense system or Cheetah, but because of a gust of wind created by Maxwell's wishes. When she gets headbutted by Superman, she can walk it off. But for some reason, she can't handle magic wind. There's no way you guys wrote this plot point with a straight face. I can't even say this with a straight face, and it has ruined many takes. Alright, I gotta get serious. So Diana tries once again to reach out to Maxwell and show him the truth, but she is unable to use her lasso to reach him. Damn, this really seems like a tricky situation. I wonder how she's gonna overcome. Oh, she got the lasso on him like that. All right, whatever. Let's just get this over with. I don't care anymore. So Diana gives him the speech about how cheating to get the things you want is wrong, and how sometimes we forget about the things that truly matter in our desire of greed for the third time. And when Maxwell won't listen, Diana reveals she was broadcasting her message to the world through him. All right, it's fine. But here we are truly understanding why Maxwell Lord went on this quest for power. Here, we aren't told why like in the rest of the movie. Instead, we are just shown his childhood. How he grew up in this household with a father who abuses both him and his mother. How he was bullied at school for being different. and how he started off as a hopeful businessman looking to make his impact on the world in a small office. He wanted everything because most of his life he had nothing. This was the first time the movie actually made me feel very emotional. Made me wish the rest of the movie was like this. Maybe I was wrong about the script. Oh, the movie's still going on? All right, I'll continue. So, Maxwell remembers how his son is in danger, and as he escalated the Cold War, realizing the error of his ways, he along with others renounced their wish. The Soviets and the Americans call off their nukes, and the day is saved. But what if you don't renounce your wish? Like, realistically speaking, the Russians would not have ended things over a speech, and America would still be screwed. They'd still be nuked. And even though her fur is gone, it's not confirmed whether Barbara gave up her powers from before, but I can assume it's a no based on Patty Jenkins' response. I hate the writing again. It's so lazy. Anyway, so Maxwell flies back to Washington, D.C. Yeah, because after all that, there was a pilot waiting on standby for this maniac. Okay. He tries to find his son, and he peers out of the woods for some reason, even though we just saw him on a freeway, and he apologizes for being super neglectful. Okay, so we flash forward to Christmas with Diana as she has a flirty conversation with the dude who Steve took over. It flies off into the sunset smiling at the camera like Superman and abandoning humanity for 30 more years. Nice. I'm so glad it's over. Wait, there's a post-credit scene? I made it this far, why not? Alright, so here Diana is shown to be walking around a marketplace. When a telephone pole comes down and almost hits the little girl, she grabs her one arm and saves her. The little girl's mother comes around and thanks Diana for saving her kid, and
You have to let me thank you, miss.
oh hey, it's Linda Carter as Asteria. Oh wow, she's aged so incredibly well for someone who's pushing 70. I'll let it go that she also sat out of all those major wars and let the Holocaust happen. Alright, movie over. Let's go to the overview. So if I had one word to describe this entire film, it's conflicted. As much shit as I give certain parts of this movie, it's really not as terrible as some will have you believe. There are actually really good elements in this. The directing by Patty Jenkins was good for the most part. The acting was well done. Yeah, there were certain times where Pedro Pascal was overdoing it a little, but he was told to do that. It was still fun to watch him. The characterization for Wonder Woman was fantastic. Thought it was a perfect representation of her comic version. Yeah, even though in the comics she doesn't mind guns, she breaks them here. I don't care about any of that. The character itself was done perfectly. The villains were great. What can I say? I like it sometimes when there are villains that just want to rule the world with some depth behind their character. When I say Pedro Pascal was eclipsed by Kristen Wiig earlier, I meant dialogue-wise, because the characterization behind Maxwell Lord was done a little better. The score is fine, nothing memorable that we haven't heard before. When I highlighted most of these things in this video, I was trying to show that I'm not just riding the hate train. I actually think there's a really good movie here, but the awful writing and pacing brings it down a lot. This whole movie seems like it was made off a great first draft, and Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns should have rewritten the script. Keep the parts that work, remove most of the filler. Yes, you could keep Steve's 80s adventure, I actually kind of liked it, but the movie felt too long. If you absolutely need to keep it 2.5 hours, then have scenes that explain the Dreamstone and Wonder Woman learning her new powers to replace the filler. But that still doesn't address the biggest plot hole of Wonder Woman's 100-year hibernation, and no one talking about how the world almost ended 30 years ago. So in my opinion, this movie should be set in modern day after Justice League. Alright, hear me out for a second. You won't have to do anything involving her hiding herself. You could replace the Russians with the conflict in Afghanistan, or even involve North Korea. I'm gonna get assassinated for saying that one. I don't care. Steve's adventure could include modern day culture and fashion. Maxwell Lord could use social media to further his quest. And every part of this movie does not have to change for the most part. Also, when you are promoting your movie, don't compare your antagonist to Donald Trump. Using this man to create unnecessary buzz around your movie damages how others will perceive it, as the guy who is supposed to be a representation of a truly hated man is portrayed as a sympathetic person and a caring father for the most part. I spent a week writing the script, and during the process, the Capitol Hill invasion happened, and portraying a man as hateful as he is with an army of supporters like this is actually really damaging the cause you're trying to fight for. I'm not a Trump supporter in any way. This wasn't needed. In conclusion, my problem with Wonder Woman is with the writing. In my experience, would have been better if they improved it. I'll work on Death Note now that I'm done this movie. I'm out.